Did you have a good lunch? So we will continue from where we left off in the morning, and we talked about Shimjong logos and creativity in the morning, and we now will cover the final conclusion on the creativity, and the foundation for value is in God's Shimjong, or true love. So if we but so we said that within God's Shimjong, the centering on God's Shimjong, the internal Songsang and internal Hyeongsang have give and take action, or give and receive action, and that forms logos. And it's the centering on the purpose, the logos and the Hyeongsang have this, and then the creative. And what about, and then for human beings, then on centering on our Shimjong, we have a plan, and we have plus that the material and ingredients, and then we create with that. So then so creativity is different in God as opposed to human beings. So God plans on His own, and as it takes His own Hyeongsang aspects to create it. But human beings, though, already there is they have a purpose centering on the Shimjong, and then when there's that, then we plan that and plan that. However, in order to accomplish that, they have to go into God's created world and find the materials and ingredients with which to accomplish their plan and to create. And this is the difference between human creativity and God's creativity. So then, let's look at the God's creativity and the creation by scientists. So God sets the purpose for creation centering on His Shimjong, and He centering on His four-position foundation. He creates it in order so that there will be a harmonious and unified and peaceful world. However, scientists, not centering on Shimjong, but rather centering on reason. And it is not a purpose of creation, but it's a purpose of invention. And so it is centering on themselves, and so they have they form a four-position foundation centering on themselves, and so that is why their inventions often produce a pollution and weapons and war and the destruction of the environment. And so because they are not centering on God's purpose, they are centering on man's purpose, and so there's a big difference between God's creation and scientists' inventions and creation. So they make weapons in order to protect their country, and right now there are many people who are dying as a result of those weapons and also as a result of air pollution. So But God is centering on the Shimjong, and they're loving the object partner, and the motive is to receive joy. But a reason is not that case, though. Reason, the purpose for invention is not to receive joy or to love, but rather to self-centered. And so the content of a scientist's invention and God's creation is quite different. So there's everything has value, and the standard of that value has to be on God's Shimjong, or true love. So the absolute standard for absolute value is that as a God, a true God. But the standard of human standard of value can change, and so the values that the humans have set change, and so that can never become of the whole, and it is self-centered, and it will cause a lot of damage to others. But the Father said that the standard for the absolute value is a true God. Why did Father put the word true before God? In the early days of our church, Father did not put the word true before God. But in 1960, after the holy marriage of a true parent, there was a 7-year course, and from 1960 to end of 1967. This is 7 years, and the first 3 years of that 7-year course was for a mother to find her position, and in the 4 years following that was centering on the children, and then for the true parents' family to find its position, and so the mother found, and the children found their position, and the true parents were established. So then, in 1968, January 1, at midnight, Father declared God's Day. So then, but after that, he established a Parents' Day, and a day of Children's Day, and a day of all things. So, if Adam and Eve had not fallen, then and reached perfection, then they would have they would have established a God's Day, and on that day also the Parents' Day, or Children's Day, and a day of all things. So, because of the fall, that was not maintained, and so but the true parents for the first time established the Parents' Day, Children's Day, and Day of all things, and then finally at the end, a day of then the God's Day at the end. So within these four these four main ceremonies, in the beginning, they didn't have the word true, but in in 1994, Father had to take down the signboard for the Unification Church, HSA-UWC, but put up the sign for the Family Federation for World Peace and Unification. So then this was 40 years after the beginning of the HSA-UWC, on May 1st, 1994. And then he said, we're going to put the word true in front of each of the four major ceremonies, four major holy days. And so, True God's Day, True Parents' Day, True Children's Day, and a day of True All Things. He said to put the word true in front of each of those holy days names. And so then from that time, he started talking about a true God. And so then, this kind of content, why did he put the word true in front of it? There is a meaning there that is centered on God. If you take out the word true, then God will not be the center. And so, within the first 7-year period, he declared everything, and then at the end of that, then after 40 years after the founding of the HSA-UWC, he put on the word true. And then that autumn, he said that the mother is now the second founder of a Unification Church. And then many leaders said, well, look, so Father said that she is the second founder. So then right now they are trying to establish her with those words. So what is the founder and the Messiah the same thing? No. The founder can be anybody. Anybody can be a founder. But Messiah is not something that anybody can do. No matter how great they are, no matter how much good character they may have, no matter how much knowledge they may have, you cannot be the Messiah. The Messiah is sent by God. And then you cannot just say anyone is the Messiah, but only the God. And the person who comes with God's lineage is the Messiah. That's the only person. So through that person, then all the humanity, the descendants of Adam, are living with original sin, and then he has revealed everything, and is clearing away Satan's lineage completely, and he has that. The person who comes as Messiah has the authority to do all that, and so without that. He cannot. So Messiah must not have original sin for that reason. So, and he can't be Messiah just because you want to be. So God has to send, and he has to be born as God's son. God's son. So even though he born through physical parents, but you already providentially and nationally and family. There must be conditions established there, and on that foundation, although the parents themselves have original sin, but the seed is planted there, and the Messiah is sent. So that's how Jesus came too. Jesus did not have original sin, And then Mary and in the Zachariah's family where Jesus was born, they had original sin. Why is that? Because we are born on this earth in physical parents. But in the Garden of Eden, the creation happened within God. That is why it's God's son and daughter. But because of the fall, became Satan's children. But then for us to go back to God, then the person who is in the center of that has to be the person who is the Son of God, who is sent by God. That is the Messiah. And so God planned prepare for 4,000 years in order to send Jesus. And then 2,000 years after Jesus' death, the Messiah came again. So now, no more Messiahs will come. Why? Because God's providence always succeeds on the third time. And so now, Father had a more serious mission than Jesus in that sense. Why? Because there is a limitation to his physical body. And within that period, he had to complete God's providence. In other words, complete and for everything to be done. And then he has to be able to say, everything, it's all done. So but Jesus said on the cross, it is done. And Father saying it is done is completely different meaning. Jesus has meant that it was spiritually. In other words, before he went to the cross, no one recognized him as Messiah. The Judas, the Zachariah's family, the John the Baptist, Joseph's family, no one recognized him as Messiah. And until he was 30, he waited 30 years for that to happen. But that foundation was not established till he left his home at the age 30. And so what Father said is that, so that's why he taught to repent, for the kingdom of heaven is at hand. So he said, he taught to repent, because the kingdom of God is at hand. And so, but no one heard those words and tried to live that way. He went to village, and if he was persecuted, he would go to another village, and people would throw rocks at him and spit on him. But he would go to another village, and so he found one disciple after another in that way. He went to the Sea of Galilee, and he grabbed hold of a fisherman who was fishing there, and asked him to follow him. And that was Peter. So Peter said, from now on, become a fisher of men instead of a fisher of fish. And so then Peter followed that. And it's very amazing that he was able to do that. And he said, I love the Lord at the risk of my life. And so he followed him there. So in the end, he left his home at the age of 30, and he made a declaration that the kingdom of God is at hand. Repent. Who are you? I am the Messiah. He declared his messiahship. And then he told his disciples and asked us, who do they say I am? He said, I declared myself as Messiah, but who do they say I am? Who do they think I am? And when Father was a rally, and then afterwards he would ask us, who came? And what was their reaction? He would always ask us after a big rally. And Jesus did the same thing. And then the disciples each said something. One person said, "Oh, they say that you are the Elijah, or that you are Isaiah." They each said one thing, and then finally he asked Simon Peter, "Who do you say that I am?" And then Simon said, "You are the Christ, the Son of the living God." And so then when Jesus said, "Yes, the words that you have just spoken are not come from flesh and blood, but they came from, but this is of God in heaven and speaking through you." And so now don't call yourself a Simon, but now call yourself Peter. So Peter means rock. Rock is symbolizes Christ. And so on you, I will build my church, and that church will not be overthrown by evil forces. So then So in other words, on that rock, he would say, the Lord, that I will build my church on the Lord, the Christ, the rock symbolizing Christ. And so, but then Peter, at the end, when he was in the court, but all the other disciples had left. Peter was there because this was not what they had thought it would be. One person said that he was the king of the Jews. They thought that he would. They thought that when they would get some position when he was crowned the king of the Jews. But now Jesus was about to go into prison, and he was being tried. But the one person who followed him to the end was Peter. And then Peter asked Jesus about this. Jesus asked him, "Do you love me?" "I love you." I said, "I love you with my life." He said, "Oh, that's what he kept saying." And Jesus asked again. And then the third time, three times, so Peter said, gave him the same answer, that I love you with my life. But then Jesus said, "No, tonight, before the cock crows, you will deny me 3 times. So he, in his own mind, he thought that he loved Jesus at the risk of his life. He never imagined that he would betray him. But Jesus could always see that. He could see that Satan was already in Peter's heart, and that and when he was on trial for being the Son of God, he already Satan was in him, and that he would not be able to follow him to that point. Peter didn't know that, but Jesus told him that. And then Peter. Now, for Peter, was the Lord's word more important, or his own thoughts more important? The whole thought was not important. The Lord's words are important. So he had been loving Jesus at risk of his life until now, and he says no. But Jesus said no. Then he had to follow Jesus' words at that time. So he had to really follow Jesus at the risk of his life and be ready to die. But Jesus could not say everything. He said, "Hey, Peter, I can see Satan in you, so you need to be careful tonight." So if that had been the case, then Satan would not leave him. Satan would accuse, because he had been taught, because Peter had been taught. And so the Lord wanted to educate him, but he could not. But he gave him that information, that tonight you will deny me 3 times tonight. And so then Jesus went into the court, and then this is the high priest was the judge there, and when he went to the court, then the high priest asked him, "Are you the Son of God?" Asked him. So because this is what he's being charged with. And how do you think Jesus answered? Do you think he would say no? He said yes. And asked again, he gave the same answer. I think if he had been asked 100 times, he would have given the same answer. But then he himself, he is now saying himself that he is the Son of God. So then who? But there has to be someone else who will come forward and testify that yes, he is, and that was necessary. So. And Peter could have done that, but Peter was not able to do that because of could not fulfill his portion of responsibility, and that was his responsibility. But Peter didn't realize that. He should have gone in there, and so then going into that situation, and then the servant came and and someone came up to Peter and said, "Oh, I think I saw you with Jesus." And said, "No." And 3 times he denied Jesus. He denied 3 times. And then when he ran out of there, the cock crowed, and then he realized what had happened, but Satan already accomplished his purpose. So then, wow! I remember now. Father, Jesus told me that I would deny him 3 times. This was what he meant. So then he wept, and then. And later on in life, he hung himself. He was hung upside down on a cross, and he was executed that way. But he had to testify at that point to Jesus at that point in the court, even if he had died. then Jesus would not have had to go such a suffering course. So he denied Jesus. He had testified. So then there was no one to testify that Jesus is the Messiah because Peter had destroyed his own foundation where he had testified previously. So he came to save human beings, but no one would testify to him as the Messiah. And so then before he died, someone had to testify to him that this person is the Messiah. Then without that, he could not die. Normally, it takes 6 hours for a person to die on a cross, but Jesus could not die before this mission was accomplished. Because he would not die, the Roman soldier struck him with the spear, and then the thief on the left mocked him. He said that if you are the Son of God, then I heard that you could raise the dead, so why don't you get off the cross and save us too? He saw Jesus as in a humanistic way, and then the thief on the right said, "No, we have sinned, we committed crimes, and we deserve to be here. But he is on the cross, even though he committed no crime." And so he boldly testified, and Jesus then said, "Yes, you will go to paradise with me today." Why is that? He was a thief. Why did he go to paradise? But he testified to. He was the only person to testify to Jesus as the Messiah. So, on that foundation, Jesus was able to be resurrected, and then the disciples could come to him. Without that, that would not have been accomplished. So today, the parent has done everything. The foundation of faith, foundation of substance. They established all that because the human beings would not, and they established that within prison and established the foundation and gave the blessing and created families and the tribal messiahs and national messiahs, and they created many families that could act in his place. But so Father, of course, there were some who opposed, but Father was proud of that. But there had to be. But blessed families, however, attended Father as the Messiah and as the victor, and so he was able to say that everything was accomplished before he died. But and then right out, you know that there was after 40 days after Jesus' crucifixion, there was a big holy coming of the Holy Spirit. But in the Father's case, 40 days after his song, that did not happen. Why not? Father, he is restoration through indemnity. He is not the restoration through miracles. And so before he left, he had us do the OSDP education on all continents, and before going leaving, he called together 3,600 leaders into Korea and had a 30-day seminars, 30-day work, 30 days. In our history, there was never an instance where 3,600 people were taught for 30 days. But then the Family Federation accepted the applications, and do you know how many people applied? 6,000 applied. They quit their jobs, and the Father said, "This is the final education. I will never give you another education." And at that point, I thought, so it's difficult to do even a 7-day education. People have to get to vacations from their workplaces. So only people who are retired, old people come. So it's difficult to get other people. But 30 days? This is impossible, I thought. 3,600? Think about it. But Father said, "This will never happen again. I will never do this again. This is the final education," he said. And then from around the country, around Korea, they were having a conference in Cheongpyeong, and they were about to go home. And the Father said, "Don't go home. Come to the Cheonjeonggung Palace the next morning." And then And Father did not speak to them, though. He was not. They expected him to come and speak to them, but he didn't come. But Father said, "I want to ask you something. Are you going to? Will you do as I ask?" And they gave a small voice, answered in a small voice, and then he asked again, a slightly larger voice, and they said. Then they said yes, finally, in a large voice. And then Father said, "Then all right, then I will trust you, and I will tell you now what I want you to do. For the next 30 days, I need to educate 3,600 people. This is the final education. It will never happen again." And then he left. And then I went up there with the true parents in the elevator. I have to ask what we're going to do now. And then Father said, "You have to educate them well." And that was all he said. And then I came back down, and then I began planning the education. 6,000 applied to the Family Federation headquarters. And we had to close the applications. The headquarters said, "In the history of the Unification Church, we have never had so many people come on their own." And actually, we had to close never in the past have we had to close applications. It was an amazing thing. So in the we took just the first 3,600 and educated them for 30 days. But that was not done by me, not by Rev.Yu. So people who could communicate with the spirit world said that they saw a Father in me when I was speaking, and so then the atmosphere changed. So that on that foundation, Father said that if Father explained everything, then there would have been a tremendous foundation. But they denied all that. If they had stood on the foundation that the Father established. But after Father passed, they denied it. So 40 days, the 4 years later, after the Songhwa, it did not, that kind of a spiritual phenomenon did not occur within us. And I felt this now. But I think now, within us, within ourselves, now I think that the work of the Holy Spirit has to come from within us. Not the work of miracles, but within ourselves. That the Word becomes life, and it has to rise up within us. And that is the resurrection of Shimjong, and it is the resurrection of true love. Shimjong and true love are not things that someone can make you do. And so then from now, let's understand, see this, and do this. So the true parents, the word true. The word true, I started that time.
Okay. Okay, so explained everything about God's divine image and divine nature. So from this point, I'm going to talk about how did God come to exist? First of all, let's take a look at how God is understood through the Bible. Everybody in the Christian world knows that they understand God is the creator of all the created world. So God who created the created world, but how did God come into existence? Nobody could teach about that. The only answer is He's just eternal and always existed forever. No one can explain it. So if God was created, then who would be the creator of God? So God always existed. Therefore, they cannot give any clear answer about the origin of God. But the only person who really knows about God is God Himself. And the other person is God's Son, who is the Messiah, the true parent. And that's why God sends the Messiah, the true parent, to teach us about who God is. That's the final mission of the Messiah. We need to teach about God clearly, and if we don't understand God clearly, we cannot be reborn as new people. God needs to come and live within us. Our Father needs to live within us through God's Word, Father's Word, God's heart, God's personality needs to live within inside us. And when those people are gathered together, then God is present and the Father is with us. So God who created the created world, how does that God exist? The only person who can explain that question, once again, is God Himself or God's Son, the Messiah. So within the Bible, it merely says that God exists by His own power. However, for us to follow the truth, we need to understand it through our reason. So some people, can really find many other things in the Bible easy to believe, but how to believe in God, it's not rational, it's not reasonable. And then in the Bible, it says that God is spirit and God is love. As in the book of Romans, it says that God's original nature, God's power and nature are already displayed in all the created things. So we can see within, the created beings, there is energy. But can we find God within those things? However, human beings were created as God's image. So can we find God within human beings? Problem is that we have fallen human beings, so there are people there's no one who lives completely according to their original mind. People have fallen mind. So that method also is not sufficient for us to understand God clearly. There's no one who could teach us about that. That's why Jesus said, I have many things to tell you. What I tell to you is not anything that I make of myself, but I tell you what the Father has taught me. The things that I do are not the things that I do, but they are done by my Father in heaven. Even so, but you don't believe me, because my Father is not in you. So apart from true Father, who else could explain to us clearly? Sorry, only the Father can teach us about the Father. So what about in the unification principle revealed by true Father, the true parent? In the exposition of divine principle, it explains that God exists through the dual characteristics. And in God's dual characteristics, we have original Songsang and original Hyongsang, and that God exists as the unified body, harmonized unified body, as the subject. That God is the unique one being, God, who exists as the harmonized subject. And that also God has original positivity and negativity. So how do we understand God through Wally Boncheron or OSDP content? So So the original substance of the divine principle, that unified body, is the same as a core 1 point. So let's have a look in the physical world. The created world was created through the so we know that in the created world we can see positivity and negativity. Therefore, we know the original cause, the first cause, also contains positivity and negativity. So Seongsang and Hyeongsang are the primary attributes of God. So in God, the Seongsang and Hyeongsang, the center of that point, the central point, where they come together completely, and also where positivity and negativity, which are attributes of that, positivity and negativity are attributes of Seongsang and Hyeongsang. So we have these two parts. God has mind and body, and human beings have mind and body. But within human beings, we have men and women who both have mind and body. So within the original substance, there is Seongsang and there is Hyeongsang. Within Seongsang, there is personality, there is Shimjeong. Also, there is principle, there is order, there is the universal prime force. And there, of all of that, there is a core, the core. The first core is the core of the whole, the core of the universe, the core of the cosmos, the core of everything, the core of cosmos and the universe. And that core is the original substance. It's an invisible substance, real substance, because that original substance of God's mind and body together. So that core, there is a central part. So within the central aspect of that core, there is an axis. And there's that vertical axis, and it develops to the vertical father. In that axis, there is a center and there is Shimjeong. It's that axis is connected with the father vertically, and in that core, so it's connecting with the vertical father. That means development. In other words, there was a time period where God created God Himself. It was a period through which God grew. And in that period, God Himself had a portion of responsibility. Therefore, within Him, couldn't create something that's not within Himself. Something not within Himself could not be the principle. So all the created beings resemble God, and that's why all the created world will have this growing period to reach perfection. Human beings also have that growing period in which they need to fulfill their portion of responsibility in order to have dominion over the created world. So through God growing, through that growing period, the arrival point was the Father. That's the vertical Father. And in that growing period, there's a seed. And then also within that heck, there is the Shimjeong, which is the essential attribute of God. It is the source and the root of true love and the core of personality. And within that, we have the four great realms of heart. Children's heart, children's 심정, brother and sister 심정, husband, wife 심정, and parent 심정. Because God is the masculine subject. So growing vertically in that period does not arrive at the mother's position, it's the father's position, because the father is the seed. So through true love, we accomplish true life, and this connects to true lineage. So that very core itself is the actual substance which contains all of these dimensions or aspects of God's nature, the central, 심정, and true love. So in OSDP, there's always is a core within God, and that core is the actual substance. And within that actual substance, there is a vertical, there is an axis, and that axis is in alignment with the vertical father. The father, when the father gives birth to sons and daughters, when the father's children have children, then the father goes up to the position of grandfather. Right? So parents need to have children to become parents. Likewise, the grandparents need to have grandchildren in order to be grandparents. And this is the three generations of kingship are connected or derived from this content. So from the viewpoint of OSDP, within God, there is that core, and that core is actual substance, 심정. And within 심정, there are the four realms of heart. 심정 of children, brothers and sisters, husband, wife, parent 심정. But seen from stages of development, we have parent 심정, husband, wife 심정, and children 심정, 3 stages. So we'll go through that again in more concrete detail. So when you have children together, then their relationship. If you don't have children, there's no relationship. If there's no relationship between husband and wife, you can't have children, cannot become parents. So for God to arrive at the position of parent needs to grow from the son into the father. Let's have a look at True Father's words. Why? So many of this content I'm repeating to you. Why is it important? Because it's important. We need to have opportunities to hear again, so that it can sink in, so that we can understand it more deeply. So God is unique and existed from before the birth of the universe. He's only one being, eternal, unchanging being. In other words, the absolute being. When we say absolute, we mean that the attributes are eternal, unchanging, and absolute. If there is two, it's not absolute. That means there is only one. If there is not eternal, it's not absolute. When we say that God is the absolute being, it means unique, unchanging, and eternal. Unique, unchanging, and eternal being. So that God existed before this universe came into being. So for what reason did God come into being? For what reason? I mean, because of what? Because of love, God came into being. Because of power or energy or whatever? No, none of those things, because of love. How did God come into being? Due to love. As a result of, due to love, God came into being. The basis of the universe, then, how did that come into being? Because there was the seed of love, and that seed of love absorbed the reciprocal position and came together to give birth to God, to form God's Songsang and Hyongsang. God has Songsang and Hyongsang together. So, or did God exist before Songsang and Hyongsang? Did they exist with God, or did they come out after God? What is Father, according to Father's word, God existed before that. And then that seed of love within God, as it came forward, gave birth to Songsang and Hyongsang. So through centering on the seed of love, absorbing the reciprocal position, God formed Songsang and Hyongsang. Let's consider, like in soil, we put a seed inside, and we put the seed inside. The roots go down, and the sapling comes out, or the seedling comes out. Requires time. So originally there's the seed for roots to go down and the seed come out. Same with God. In God there was a seed of love, and that seed of love absorbed everything from around it, and gave and came to so that God came to be comprised of Songsang and Hyongsang, centering on what? Centering on love. They were formed centering on love. Songsang and Hyongsang were formed centering on love. So it's exactly the same as you. How about you? How were you formed? When love was shared between your father and your mother, the seed of your existence, one cell was conceived, and that one cell grows into you eventually. In the same way, God was brought forward. And as God evolved, then God's eyes formed, God's mouth formed, God's nose formed, everything formed. From love, there was a cell within the seed of love, and that evolved or developed. That seed of love absorbed everything around it, and then God came to be formulated from Songsang and Hyongsang. How? Because of love, through love. That's True Father's words. In the same way. So in the collected works of True Father's words, volume 207, page 27 in the Korean version, and in the Cheonseongyong it's page 1526 in the Korean version of the Cheonseongyong. So nobody was able to explain this content before. No one. Only True Father. So again, Father's words. I searched for everything, and I went into every corner and nook and cranny in the spirit world to find out. So it means Father went to, that means that Father went to every place within the spirit world. God too. True Father met God, met the great saints. And when Father revealed this, then everybody bowed before Father. Satan surrendered to Father. 40 days, Father had to fight with God to get the truth recognized. Satan, fought with Satan to get it recognized. Satan objected to the content of the truth. The main thing that Satan objected to was tarakron, or the theory of the fall. had to keep persevering until Satan gave up and naturally surrendered. Cannot attack Satan. Had to go and find and so even though the truth was denied by God and by Satan, and then Father's going again, had to go back and check with every place. Satan denies it. So Satan denied the truth, and even God denied the truth and said, no, that's not it. So Father had to go back again and again and again. So eventually God, as true Father, found Adam and Eve and brought them before God and then explained, this is how it happened, this is how it happened. What about Eve? What happened with you? Adam, what about you? What happened? This is how it happened. And then the angel, it didn't, this is how you made them fall, isn't that true? And then, at that point, God said, yes, you're right. Only at that point. And then said, everybody come forward and bow before Moon Myung. And through that process, that's the principle. The principle was the thing that brought Satan to surrender. And so we are studying the principle. So Father went to every corner of the spirit world and found out that the truth is basic and simple. That when two become one, absolutely, the mind energy and body energy are two, and they come together as one, absolutely one, and then that creates a vacuum within there, and God is drawn into that place there, just like the marrow within the bone. And in here we have man's love, woman's love come together, and that becomes the core of the universe when God enters then into that. When true love comes together with that, with the substance, that becomes the core of the universe, the core of the cosmos. This content is in page 170, the volume 170, page 171, Korean version of Father's speeches. So, as Jesus said, that which is accomplished in heaven will be accomplished on earth. As is loosed on earth is loosed in heaven. Without unifying the spirit world, the physical world cannot be unified. It's hard to digest the spirit world and unify the spirit world. How active Father was in order to create the foundation to unify the spirit world. So Father already gave the blessing to the 4 great saints on earth. So if they go to the spirit world, they already recognize true Father as the true parent because they blessed him. Jesus as well, who's the Messiah. But Jesus was unable to proceed to the position of the true parent, was not able to give the blessing. Therefore, true Father gave the blessing to Jesus and established Jesus, an adopted child for Jesus, so that Jesus himself could form a true family. If we go to the spirit world, in the spirit world, then what will Father call? What will Jesus? How will Jesus refer to Father? They're the same. They are both the Messiah. And from one viewpoint, Jesus is the elder brother because he came as a Messiah. He came first. However, true Father was able to proceed to the position of the true parent. Therefore, Jesus received the blessing and then went to the position of true parent. within the world of Shimjong, True Father is in a position closer to God because True Father was able to rise to the position of True Parent before Jesus could rise to the position of True Parent. Therefore, Father is the center. So when Jesus refers to Father, he calls him Father in the spirit world. Maybe spiritually, if you hear these things, in the future, many people will want to see God, but they will not see God. We can't see God in the spirit world. But God will appear using True Father's spirit body. Nobody in the world knows who the True Parent is. That person used a physical body like us? That being, that person is God in substance, a substantial True Parent. Therefore, in order to unify the world, or the physical world, then Father needed to accomplish unity within the spirit world prior to that. And on that foundation, bring unity within the physical world, and then inherit that central position. When the world foundation in there is set, for 2,000 years the Christian foundation was built. Father said that on the foundation of the 2,000 years of Christian history, if Father had been accepted, then could have built the restored world in 7 years. But when Christianity rejected God, True Father, then everything went into Satan's realm. Everything fell into Satan's realm of dominion. There was no development from that point forward. And today, the Unification movement, Unification Church, are the ones who are meant to establish that foundation. Therefore, if we don't move forward, then our situation becomes more and more difficult. That's the principle. That's True Father's words. So, how? What should we do? We need to have a clear determination about what we need to do and have the determination to do that. We're going to have to fight to move forward. Not fight against each other. Did Father ever fight with Christians? So even though it's very difficult, very painful, even Father's disciples went to Father and said, Father, we need to fight back against the Christians. And Father didn't agree to it. And gather them together. And then would talk for hours and say, let's go out to meet them. When they got a large group of people together, then they were able to overcome persecution, not by fighting, but by conveying the word and resurrecting people. Digest that difficulty through joy. That's the path that we need to go. God stands on the side of principle, the side of Shimjong and the side of true love. The center, the center is the most fearful, difficult word, because if the center wobbles, if the center is unstable, then everything becomes unstable. Do you think it's easy to stand in the Messiah's position? Do you think Father would say, if anybody wants to be the Messiah, then come forward. I will give everything to help you. But nobody can do that role. They don't know what to do. Restoration through indemnity? Well, you need to understand all of it in order to accomplish restoration through indemnity. Father's life course was a life course of restoration through indemnity, educating, training during Father's life. Father never rested at all any time during his life. Because of this, today we are here on the earth. The question is, how are we going to live? We need to feel it deeply through Father's words. To unify the physical world, we have to unify the spirit world. Also, when Father was on this, there are two words that Father taught throughout his entire life on earth. The first one is, he educated us about the spirit world. All the time, Father would connect his speeches and his training about the spirit world. You have to go to the spirit world. That world existed is the world of love. And his entire life, he taught us about the spirit world. And the other one was that Father's words are God's words. Therefore, you must not change them. You must not alter them. This is what Father taught us throughout his entire life. So what have they done since Father went to the spirit world? Both of those. Even though Father sends a message from the spirit world, they don't believe it. God who, even though God could, Father in the spirit world, getting together 70 disciples in the spirit world, gathering together and then sending messages through them. But they don't believe the messages that Father sends from the spirit world. Spirit world messages that Father published. Even in the newspaper, nobody really understood that. But we need to understand very clearly about the spirit world. So how about God? So God exists as through his own being. God is not a being or a person that relies on or exists due to anybody else, but exists because of his own nature. Within OSDP content, the central axis is the development that God developed along the central axis to the position of the vertical Father. And in this way, even God himself, centering on true love, God came to develop himself into the position of the Father. And this was God's growing period. And God had his own portion of responsibility in this time. Because God does not rely on anybody else, but is responsible for his own creation through that process. For that reason, God came to have creative nature and became the primary or the first Lord of creation. So if we re-summarize everything, so there's that time period where God was able, through that period through which God brought to completion and perfection, this one? So God's the process through which God developed into the position of the vertical Father was the period through which God brought to perfection the four great realms of heart. So going to the four great realms of heart, including all, it refers to those different four realms of heart. And during this period, God himself grew through his portion of responsibility. Living through the sake. And during that period, God existed for his own being. However, once God had arrived in the position of the vertical Father and had centering on the four great realms of love, manifesting a true love in substance, and in order to perfect and manifest true love in substance, then God came to create. And from that point, God began to live for the sake of his object. And true love cannot be completed without the object. So in order to unite with that object, God invested everything to give birth to that object. However, because human beings, when God created the entire created universe centering on human beings as the object of his love, then God moved from the position of existing for himself to investing everything for the sake of his object. So, you want to switch?
We have five senses, physical senses, but there are things that we can see. We have eyes, but there are some things we can see and something we can't. There are things we can hear, and there are things that we can't. For example, X-rays, we cannot see them, or alpha waves, or we have ears, and this we hear through this, but there are wavelengths that we can hear and others that we cannot hear. We hear sound. The radio announcer or speaks, then that content is all going through this room. But we cannot hear these waves that are going through this room, but those waves are passing through this room. So our ears have certain limitations in hearing, and our eyes also have limitations in hearing. But even though we can't see, they're still there, and if we can't hear, it's still there. Air we cannot see, electricity we cannot see, but and love we cannot see, but it's still there. The more something is important, the less we are able to see it. And so we cannot see God, we cannot touch him, but that doesn't mean that God does not exist. And for human beings, we can see the physical body, but we cannot see the spirit that is within us. But if we take off our physical bodies and go to the spirit world, we'll be able to see the spirit self. We can just like we can only see the physical body, but not the mind. So also in the spiritual world, we'll be able to see the spirit body, but not the spirit mind. And so just like we cannot see the spirit mind, we cannot see the original mind, which is even deeper than the spirit mind. And so we'll not be able to see Shimjong or true love, but we can feel them through an object, and we can experience through an object. And so just like we know that there's air because we're able to breathe it. And because through there's a function of the air, we're able to know that it is there. So electricity, we don't know it's there, but we see that it's functioning. And so we see the result of that, and we can say, oh, there must be electricity. So just because we can't see something doesn't mean it doesn't exist. So human beings, when we live in the physical body, they cannot see the spiritual self, but once they we take off our physical bodies, then we'll be able to see our spirit selves then. And the spirit self looks the same as the physical self, but it is a spiritual being, and so we cannot see it now. So you have spirit selves, but in everything that you're hearing right now is being recorded in your spirit self. It's just like a camera is taking, but your mind doesn't know that. But even your thoughts are being recorded in your spirit self. You cannot lie about that. So when you get to there, and when the time comes, and let's see, on July 10th, 2017, you had this education and you listened to it, all right. It's there, but what do you remember from that? Nothing there. You just slept there. That will be recorded. I was a listening group, but I was thinking of something else. I was thinking about something else. There's nothing recorded. Oh, I thought I'd listened to everything, but now I see. That's what will happen. So, if you were able to see this being recorded, I wouldn't have to tell you like this, but you don't know. So we did not know, but the Father taught us, and now we see. Now we see that this is what is happening. So we need to believe in Father's words 100%, 120%, and live that way. That is the only way for you to become eternal owners. The spirit body is a spirit substance, and so you can see it, but the spirit mind, however, you cannot see that, and so that is why you cannot see God for eternity. So just as when we are in our physical bodies, we can see the physical body, but we cannot see our mind. But the mind is located, though, within the physical body. And so also the spirit body can be seen in the spirit world, but not the spirit mind when we get there. So the perfected spirit mind will be the place where it will be the temple where God will dwell. This church is a sanctuary, is a temple, but it is only a form sanctuary. Our spirit minds are the real sanctuary, the real temple that is supposed to come about. It's a good thing to have time every week for the worship service and to understand what you are doing wrong, what you need to do. But if you just go to church and fight with everyone, then there's no reason for you to go. So you might as well just stay at home because that's not good. Even if our bodies are tired, we need to. When we come to church and receive the living word, the living water, then we will have energy. It is the power of a Shimjong, the energy of Shimjong. So we cannot see the mind of the spirit self, and if when God comes to dwell, then that will become the temple where the God will dwell. And so the completion of the spirit self is the completion of the spirit mind, and the completion of the spirit mind is the completion of Shimjong and true love, which are the essential attributes of God. So, Shimjong and true love are not perfected in a day. There has to be a subject, there has to be parents, there has to be husband and wife, there has to be children, there has to be siblings. So through the growing period, accomplish the portion of responsibility and maintain the principle and the law and order, and to come to resemble the substance of absolute sex, and become the we must become then the who come to inherit these things from God, from true love from God. And then the sperm of God has a Shimjong, we said. So because he's the original substance of Shimjong, so then this is the seed of true love. That will be the sperm. So then that sperm, if it does not have a Shimjong, then that is not a mature sperm. And so if you plant a seed that is not matured, it will not sprout. It is an immature seed, and that will be an unfertilized seed, unfertilized egg. And so then that is true for the man and for the woman. And so the then the seed of true love and the ovum of absolute sex must come together, and so the man must provide the sperm, which is the seed that carries God's 심정, and the woman provide the ovum that that is the body of a true life. So the seed has God's 심정, and the ovum also has God's ovum, God's 심정, and then that will be the body of love, a body of life. And at that time, then the man's person's spiritual mind or conscience will become the body of God, and then 심정 and true love are the essential aspects of God's mind, and then we cannot see God in the spirit world. We cannot see God, but we cannot see God, but we'll be able to see, though, when we lead life. That is, when we are able to share this, we'll be able to resonate. We'll be able to resonate. So if this is like an echo. So if I'm on the mountain and shout, then that echo will come back. So we call this a realm of resonance. So for example, so if I say to God, "Where are you?" and I'm inside you. I will hear that from inside myself. Why are you looking for me? And He will say, "Here I am." And so, this is page 250, 157. Then he speaks about it so concretely. So how do we have to know God? So just as if I were to take a needle and stick it into my arm, then my whole body would say, "Ouch!" and I would feel pain throughout my body. So the same way, I have to know God that closely, that substantially, so that if I were to prick God, that He would feel it, and if He were to prick me, I would feel it. So how are you going to do this though in 1 or 2 hours though? So our Father said that you have to receive this education 5 times. Then you'll finally begin to understand something. So you need to receive this education again and again until you die. And so then there's this resonance. And if you want to know something, then your mind will answer. And then there's no need for time or space. And then we will get to, and we'll be able to know from very quickly. So I went to a spirit world once when I was Father. When I was in the spirit world, I would ask a Father. When he was on the earth, I would ask him directly, but cannot do that in the spirit world. So, but I asked him in the spirit world, and he answered me very quickly, and this was a transcending time and space. So Father and I were able to communicate in this way after he saw us. So light is the fastest in this world, but actually in the spirit world, the speed is even much faster than that. That is even many hundreds of millions of light years away, that will only take a second to come. So that is what spirit world is. So how convenient that the world is. In that place, there you can eat, and there's no problem with eating, and you don't have to earn money. You don't need the precious stones, because anything that you need is there, and there's so much there that you just don't take it. Here on Earth, we are just fighting each other over it, but in a spirit world, there's so much that you can't take it all. And even if someone gives it to you, don't take it because there's so much of it. But we don't know the value of that. But in the earth, we don't eat, we don't see it, but even though we give something good, they don't understand that it's good. So if you want to see something, if you want to have if you want the precious stones, so if you want to, so the largest, go to the diamond shop and look at the largest diamond. But they don't show you the best ones. They only show you those two if you look like you're going to buy. So you have to dress up and put on some nice makeup and put on some nice clothes. You have to dress like you're rich, and then they will show you something because you look like you might buy something. So then they bring something out that otherwise other people don't see. But and the things in the front on the show window though are not good. So I'll try it out one time. So, and then put it on your finger. Well, I don't like this. You just say, and they just come out. Well, I think I've decided against it. You can just say that. So try it on one time. That's not a crime. That's not a crime. You just don't steal it. Make sure you don't take it with you when you leave. So that is the world that spirit world is. And so we have enough to eat, plenty to eat. And so here now, let's say that I need to bring 10,000 people within an hour here. Do you think it can be accomplished in an hour? There's a condition. They have to all be dressed in tuxedos. And the women have to be in dresses. They have to all be dressed up, formal dress. Who can do that? But that's possible in spirit world. An hour? No. Well, gather in an hour. And they will come. And then after that, they will not be able to come. But they're all in. They're all inside. And then we have to feed them. And they've eaten the best food. And then you have to clean up. You have to wash the dishes. But there's no need to wash dishes in the spirit world. Once everything is eaten, it's finished. Because everything goes back to the original elements. It goes back to the original elements. So we just have to think of it that way. So that's a wonderful world. But here we are fighting over everything in this world. So Father said, that's why Father said, no matter how good things may be in this world, there's an even more wonderful world. I have nothing that I want here. So that world is the owner. And so today we have learned that from our Father. So also let us as well, as His sons and daughters, let's think that way as well. It's not a bad way to think. And just don't steal, and just don't take it out of the store. So today we need to understand that what it means to transcend time and space, because there's no need for words there. Of course, it's better to have words, but the world of Shimjong, everything is communicated directly. And then we see, but we can't feel that. Right now, parents and children cannot communicate. Husband and wife cannot communicate. So, but when we go to that world, what's going to happen if we go to there as we are today? Love, on the earth, when we were young, we loved, but the older we get, there's less and less love, and we sleep in separate beds, and then finally in separate rooms, and then we came together to become one. But now, when we plant a crop, then it matures as time goes on, and we also should mature as time goes on. But now we are sleeping in separate beds and separate rooms. Are we going to mature like that? So and then we try to hold her hand, and she knocks it away. Is that maturing love? And then you have to love each other more than young people do. But that's not the way that we are living. So Father said that the blessed families Father asked, what are the blessed families doing? He said, always to sleep naked. Did you hear that? He said that we should. What do such blessed families do? That the husband and wife should sleep naked and to hang on to grab on to each other's sexual organs. So the young people do that without even being told. But the older you are, and to hold hands and to touch each other, and to spend the night together, and live that way. That's what he said. When you're in 60s and 70s, you can't live that way. But so when you're in the 20s and 30s, you have to remember how it was back then, and to touch and then the next day you have energy. Then the next day you fight, and you lose all your energy. Then, you understand? And so Father said, the older you are, our families should sleep without clothes on. And then one time he asked, I said, "Are you? Hold up your hands if you're doing it that way." But no one held up their hands. So then the one leader, I won't give his name. One leader said, "So I'm going to do as Father said." And so he and his wife that night started sleeping naked. He should have locked the door. He should have locked the door. Then the grandchild in the morning came into the room saying, "Granddaddy, grandmommy," and they were sleeping there naked. And he was very shocked. And so Father said, I said, did you sleep naked? And he said, yes, I did. But my grandchild caught us, and he was very, very. He laughed so much. So that kind of story. Some other people would say that's strange, but that's not strange. That's what you have. That's the training for the maturity of love. Who else is going to tell you that? What other leader? What other sovereign? What a teacher? What a parent is going to give you that kind of education? So then, Father, he is the owner of love. And he truly is the owner of a true parent. And so, because that is necessary for us to do, he teaches us to do it. We must live just according to our own thought. So try it once. President, Mr. President. So really, it will give you energy. It will give you hope. No matter where, you will have a life energy. But if you fight, though, you just lose all the energy. Love is energy, and 심정 is energy. So we have to live in a way that we resonate with Father. So in that when we are joyful, all our cells will be joyful. When we are sad, all our cells will be sad. So he said that when I am sad, my cells cry out. He said. I thought, really? Do the cells wail? Do they cry out? I'm curious, aren't you? And so I experienced that once. Spiritually, I met Father in my dream. Father ran a distance of about 100 meters, and then he stopped, and he was crying. And he told me something which I cannot say now, but that was so moving to me, and I just kneeled down. I gave a bow. But then at that point, at that mind, all my cells were so joyful that they cried out. All my cells, they because I was weeping, and and I was weeping so hard that I could not breathe. So that was out of joy that they were crying out. If it's a sadness, I'm sure it would be even more. So I told Father about this one time when I was with him alone, and he listened, and he said, "You have to have at least 3 experiences like that," he said. So then, how about you? If you've never had such an experience, then you have now experienced it once by listening to my words. One time in Hannam-dong, Father was eating after breakfast, after he ate breakfast, and there were a few people left with Father, and one really great person in our church came running up, and he asked a question. He came in a hurry. "I have something to ask you," he said, and he just ran into the room. And Father says, "Well, what is so urgent? What is so urgent for you to ask?" And he said, "Father, when I meet my friends, they all talk about spiritual experiences, but I've never had a spiritual experience. How can I have a spiritual experience? How can I communicate with the spirit world?" He asked Father. And Father said, "What do you think? How do you think Father answered? Do you think he would have said communicate with spirit world?" He said, "It's better not to communicate with spirit world." Why? If you communicate with spirit world, it's complex, it's complicated. So if a person who cannot keep the laws and principles on the earth, it would be even more complex and difficult for them to keep the laws of a spirit world. But actually, talking to me, you've already experienced that. So just to believe that. So you have the principle that I've taught you. That's enough. Just reading the principle, that is a spiritual experience. So what more do you want? So what if it's fake? And then another person asked this question. So I hate cats. I like all other animals, but I hate cats. But what do I do if I go to the spirit world and there are cats? I hate them. And one person asked him that. And what did Father say? "Well, really? You don't like cats? Well, then there won't be any cats for you when you go to spirit world. Because you don't get anything that you don't like doesn't appear for you in spirit world." But there's something that cats can teach you, but you cannot learn that because you do not like them. But he did say that we have to treat everything with love because they were all created by God's love. So that is the spirit world. So to feel and to experience and to resonate with Father. So all right, let's stop there and take a break. I've went over behind a little bit, and so let's extend the break time by the exact amount of time that I've expended.